absorb as much of it as you can, and then bring that information with you to class. Next, in 2 weeks, when I meet with only pods 1, 2, and 3, and then the following week after that, pods 4, 5, and 6, we're going to break into pod groups and talk about your pod presentations. And for example, Daniel, you were asking me when we're going to break into pod groups. When we do the pod thing and we talk about the disability, for example, pod 1 is autism spectrum disorder, pod 2, emotional disturbances, pod 3, you're doing intellectual delays, pod 4, the visually impaired, pod 5, deaf and hard of hearing, and pod 6, other health impaired. With each of those presentations, there's a definition, there's a cause, there's a sign and symptoms. A sign is what we see in these individuals, and a symptom is what these people or individuals feel. There's educational ramifications, implications. So everybody in the pod's going to pick one of those, and then somebody within the pod hopefully has a background or understanding of how to put together a PowerPoint. Everybody can send their information to that person, and you can create this really nice PowerPoint about this disability that your pod has been assigned to. Of all the years I've been doing this, you guys have sent me some of the best stuff I've ever seen. And it's just miraculous what you can do and how creative you can get with these PowerPoints, okay? So I collect those PowerPoints from you on the days before they're due, and then I put them up on screen, and then your pod kind of reads and goes through them, and it talks. We learn about that type of a disability as an entire group as the pod presents it on their given days. So, okay, so does that make sense? Daniel, you good with that? That makes sense? So in a couple weeks, I was hoping to maybe do pods next week too, to share, everybody in their pod share out what their APA paper was about. But that's kind of up in the air. If we're going to have this 40-minute guest speaker come in and talk to us, I might have to table the pod roundtable or sharing of information. So we'll just kind of play it by ear and see where we're at with that. Okay? All right. Any thoughts or concerns before we get going? Any ideas? And you guys feeling good? I hope I got all your review quizzes. You guys have been doing really good with that stuff. So I hope it's information that you can retain. Everybody should have had a 3x5 card that looks like this. Okay. All right. Everybody take your 3x5 card. Hold it in your dominant hand. Okay. If you're right-handed, hold it in your right hand. If you're left-handed, you hold it in your left hand. Okay, grab a pen or a pencil. Put the card on your forehead, just like this. And write your name backwards. Now make sure you put the card up on your forehead. Somebody wrote with felt pen on their forehead, forgot to put the card there. Okay, so now write your name backwards with your non-dominant hand. There you go, Stevens. That'll work. All right. Let me see what those look like. Can you put your, oh, I can't even read those. Oh, okay. Kind of looking corny to you. How did you feel writing your name like that? Did you feel like you had no control of your motor skills? Okay.
I thought it was going to come out a little bit more clean, but it
didn't. All right. What's the point I'm trying to make here? We are pretty much blessed that we have motor skills and we feel pretty comfortable when we catch a ball or kick a ball or we manipulate things, whatever. Individuals with motor skill problems, that's how they feel in the attempt to participate. Okay? And you can kind of take a look at the way your name was drawn. And that's how awkward it feels that have a disability where your motor skills are just not where you'd like them to be. The second thing is I want to put this up on the board because our brain plays tricks with us. And what I want you to try to do is this. All right. For 15 seconds, I want everybody to read this, and then somebody give me how many F's that you count. Count every F in the following text. Ready, go. You've got 15 seconds. And stop. Okay. Now, somebody blurt out how many F's did you find? Sergio, did you count the number of F's?
I counted 5.
Counted 5, okay. Stevens, how many did you count?
I counted 3.
3.
Hey, I counted 5 as well.
3.
Okay, anybody else? Who counted what?
I counted 2.
I
How many?
counted 2.
You counted 4. That's how many I counted. How about
2.
Alma? How many did you count?
I counted 2.
2 F's in that whole package. All right. Let's see how many there are. You all know how many you counted, but there are actually 6. Okay, the interesting phenomenon of this is anyone who counts 6, you're in the genius category. Well, I myself counted 4. I was like you, Susan. I counted 4. And then okay, there's actually 6. If you read it again, go back and try to find the 6S before you go on. And the reason behind this is that the brain cannot process the word of. Interesting. So when we look through this, we might see one F in of, but we bypass everything else. So interesting how the brain has the power to control what we see, what we do, how we feel, and all the 6 senses that we have. So I thought that was a pretty interesting thing. That came my way about a month ago, and I thought, I'll do it with you guys and see what you think. So it's actually an Alzheimer's eye test. I don't know if that's true or not, but okay, now I want to put one more thing up on the board, and I want you to see if you can tell me how many squares do you see in this diagram here? How many squares? Count them up. And once you count them, give me a number.
17. 21.
Okay. Hold on. Let's see if I can. Oh, there we go. Okay, 17. Somebody says 21. Look at the total picture. I know that already there's 16 squares in the center here, and there's one large square that makes 17.
16.
Who else?
16.
16?
24.
You're getting closer.
26.
Getting closer.
25.
32.
32, 25, 32, getting close, really close. Think about it, how we've evolved from 17 all the way up, and now we're at 32.
35.
35. Anybody else? How many squares are in this thing? And if you're not seeing this video-wise, it's a large square with 3 vertical lines and 3 horizontal lines, making 16 squares inside. Anybody else? The actual number that's inside, 34. I'm not sure if there's a 35, fifth one in there, but if you look, there's 16 squares inside. There's one large square on the outside. These 4 boxes make a square. These 4 boxes make a square. These 4 boxes make a square, and these 4 boxes make a square. There's 4 more, right? How about these 4 boxes make a square? These 4 boxes make a square. These 4 boxes make a square on the inside. Okay? So I came up with all that. I came up with 34. But what's the point of this whole thing? Like, the point is this. When we test kids, we try to look at the total child. The total child. There's more that meets the eye when we look at the total child, and there's more that meets the eye when we look at a diagram like this. There's a lot more squares in here than meets the eye. So we don't want to look at our special ed kids at face value. We want to look at the total child and see all the issues about that particular child that are going on. So that's the point of this exercise here, to look beyond and to see everything there is to see about a child, and not just the motor development component of it, okay? So taking that into account, let's go to our lecture. Okay. So we took a look at that, and we'll get to that when we get down here. But starting up here, I'll get to quiz 2, and I'll get those results out to everybody next week. Just to review, we talked about federal regulations IDEA. They provide, the federal government's supposed to provide at least 40% funding to special education. We start with the referral process, the pre-referral modifications, accommodations. The student study team decides whether or not those are working or not. We can tell by how the kid is performing. They might develop a 504 plan just to make accountable what modifications and accommodations are being provided. If they are not working for the child, then we go to the assessment process. After we do the assessment, we hold the IEP. We determine if the child has an eligibility. And then we determine if we put that child in a public school in a least restrictive environment, or maybe they need a more restrictive environment, like a county health facility. But when it's all said and done, if a child receives special ed services based on qualifying and eligibility, we offer them a free and appropriate public education. Okay. The related service personnel are the ones that go out, along with the classroom teachers, of course, and provide the support for kids who qualify for special ed. It starts at the federal level here. This is where it all starts. It trickles down, and the state will adopt all of this. They might use different terminology, but the state adopts what the federal government has implemented. From the state, it goes to the district. From the district to the local school. And from the local school, if all of this is taking place and it's being conducted properly, they are in compliance. Okay? Make sense? Okay, if they are not conducting these special ed programs within the law, then they are out of compliance. Okay? We did the 3x5 card just to show what it feels like to have motor coordination deficiencies. We counted the F's to see how our brain would respond to looking at the word of, things that it takes in and things that it omits. And then last but not least, I want everybody to try this exercise here. Okay, I got this from an orthopedic surgeon. All right. Move away from your desk a little bit, give yourself some room. And while you're sitting where you are at your desk or in front of your computer, lift your right foot off the ground and make a clockwise circle with your foot. While making a clockwise circle with your foot, draw the number 6 in the air with your right hand. Your foot should change direction. Did it work, Sergio? Sure, you got a big grin on his face, like, no, this can't be happening. Kyla, did it work? Did your foot change direction?
Yeah, it did. So it was like going around instead of drawing, and it says going all the way.
Yeah.
Can you
All
repeat
right.
the instruction, please? What was lift your right foot and what?
Yeah, let me say it. While sitting where you are at, in front of your desk or your computer, lift your right foot off the ground or your right leg off the floor and make a clockwise circle with your right foot. While doing this, draw the number 6 in the air with your right hand. Your foot will change direction.
It's something over there.
What do you think? Pretty funny, huh?
Yeah.
You and I both know that this is stupid, according to this orthopedic surgeon, right? But he says, but before the day is over, you're going to sit down somewhere and you're going to try to do this again without anybody watching you to see if your foot changes direction or not. So,
Now
anyway.
we have people do it. We're gonna do it to them.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so right foot in the air, clockwise circle with your right foot, and then draw the number 6 and see if their foot changes direction. That's a right brain, left brain cross-referencing thing going on there. So I just thought I'd play with you on that one. Thought that'd be pretty funny. So let's go back to our lecture notes and kind of go down the line and see where we at as we review and as we segue ourselves into the IEP meeting. Okay, under idea, you guys all got this. Oh, we need to do the quiz, don't we? We need to go over the quiz. I'm jumping ahead of myself, I'm sorry. Let's go over the quiz just to make sure you're locked in on that one. All right, here we go. You guys, like I say, have been doing a great job with this, but just to reinforce this information, once again, all right, teacher observation is considered an assessment tool. That is true. All right, we see more in a child than any test would really tell us. And that's where the squares comes in, where we're looking at the total child and not just the components of what the test tells us to test. What does least LRE stand for? The least restrictive environment, and that's the public school. That's where we try to put all of our special ed or individuals with disabilities into the least restrictive environment, okay? IDEA states that when a specialist or a teacher conducts an assessment, they have to utilize a minimum of how many assessment tools? 2, exactly. Okay? Good one, Sergio. In order to receive it, now this one was a trick question. And this was to, Daniel, I think you told me you liked this question. In order to receive adapted PE services based on assessment results and as designated on an IEP, Individualized Education Program, an individual must have an eligibility code such as APE. And the answer to that is false, because APE is not an eligibility code. APE is a service. What would be an eligibility code? All the 13, 14 that I gave you on that list. AUT for autism, SLD for specific learning
I'm
disability,
sorry, I feel so bad. My girlfriend
TBI
just told
for
me the
traumatic
restrooms
brain
are over
injury,
there.
OHI for other health
I'm so
impaired,
sorry, I didn't know.
DI visually
You were,
impaired.
brother.
Any medical diagnosis is an eligibility
Hey,
code.
take it easy, brother.
Okay, but APE is a service, so this answer here would be false. Mickey Mouse qualifies for APE. We tested
Huh?
Mickey Mouse, and he qualified. He showed a significant
Mom.
delay in locomotor movement and object control.
Mom, Papa.
But without an eligibility, he can't receive our services. That's true. Okay? And we used to get parents who had concerns about their child before they went to the pre-referral modification accommodations. We'd test kids out who would qualify, but we couldn't give them services because they did not have an eligibility code. They weren't diagnosed with any type of disability. What is the 504 plan? It's a plan that documents modifications and accommodations. Okay, it's not part of the IEP. This is a plan for kids who don't qualify for special ed. So they create a modification accommodation document called a 504 plan. So is it part of the IEP? No, it is not. Okay. The two buzzwords, number 7, to qualify for special ed services according to ID, an individual must show a significant delay or unique need. Okay. Skill, testing a single skill. Functional, testing a sequence of skills. Bouncing a ball, dribbling, throwing, shooting a basket. Skill would basically be just maybe catching the ball. That's all you want them to do is catch the ball. Don't add anything to it, just catch the ball. Functional would be a sequence of skills. Okay? When conducting an assessment on a student with a profound disability to get a baseline of what the student can or cannot do, Professor Fisher uses the top-down model. Remember, I kind of tried to demonstrate that with a really profound individual where I start with the head, I do ocular control to see what eye movement they have. If they can turn their head left or right, then I go to the shoulders, I go to the range of motion in their arms. I'll put a beanbag in their hand to see if they can grasp the beanbag. And I use a top-down model and I compare my findings to the Brigance. And somebody actually said, Professor Fisher uses the Brigance. And I couldn't say no to that. That's actually typically right. Because the Brigance is for profound students that I do use that top-down model with. So I gave the individual credit for that. And I said, but remember, it's a top-down model. So either answer is fine with me. I try to be as flexible and understanding where you're coming from. And at least I know, I was actually pretty impressed that you remembered the name Brigance. I guess it came off my lecture notes. Okay, and what's the difference between a modification and accommodation? I gave you the answer in the email that I sent. A modification changes the rules of the game or changes the type of equipment you're using. Okay, instead of using a volleyball, you use a beach ball. Okay, instead of using a beach ball for your more severe kids, maybe a balloon would work. Okay, and accommodation is changing the environment, bringing a child closer to the front of the classroom so that they can see the instructions or observe what's going on, so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the difference between a modification accommodation, and I'm hoping you all got that because I gave that to you in the email. Any questions on any of this? Any thoughts or concerns? You're good, Sergio? You're still working on that twisting your ankle and drawing the number 6? Yeah. All right. You good? Kevin, good?
Can you repeat number 5, please?
Number 5 on Mickey Mouse. Yeah, you could be eligible based on a medical diagnosis, but if you're tested and you don't qualify, if you don't have any significant delays or unique needs, we won't qualify that individual for special ed services. Now, Mickey Mouse, he qualified for adapted PE based on assessment results, but he didn't have an eligibility code. So he cannot receive adapted PE services. And the answer to number 5 was true.
True, right? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? I'm glad you brought that up. I don't think I even reiterated what the right answer was. So okay.
Is he still able to get an eligibility code? He just hasn't been diagnosed yet?
Yeah, and that used to happen. We'd have in my day when I first started out, we'd have this thing called the clumsy child. And parents would want us to test their kids, and oh my goodness, we have to, this kid should get adapted PE, but you don't have an eligibility code. Go to your doctor and see if he can write you a prescription for ADD or ADHD, get some type of a medical diagnosis for your child, and then we can put them in adapted PE. Okay, that was in the old days. So, but the bottom line is, without a medical diagnosis or eligibility code, we can't deliver the services under the law, even if the child qualifies. Does that make sense? So then you tell the parent, well, go back and have the doctor diagnose your child with something, because maybe there's something there that they overlooked anyway. So, all right, so let me get out of this and get us back on track with the lecture notes. Okay. So that's the review quiz for that. Now, qualifying for service and eligibility codes is exactly the way I just tried to explain it. We can qualify for service, and we usually, depending on the assessment, it could be 1.5 to 2 years below age level or grade level, or anywhere in the 5th to the 10th percentile would qualify a student for special ed services. Now, if they do not have an eligibility code, they can't get the services. But if they do have an eligibility code and they do qualify, then special ed is on its way. Okay, the service providers will be there to provide the service for them. Okay. We use standardized tests, and we showed you 3 of those last week: the Brigance, the preschool, and the APs, the adapted PE assessment scale. And we also use our subjective evaluations. Teacher observation, we see more in kids than any standardized test will really tell us. Okay? The top-down model I use for profound, severe to profound kids, and that's off the Brigance. The skill assessment was the APs. That was the highest functioning one. We did the preschool assessment, and those were all based on chronological age and percentiles. Okay? Functional assessment is by teacher observation, because most of the tests we use will only test a single skill. But we can use our own teacher observation to see if there's anything functional the child can do. Can the child bat a ball off the batting tee and run to the appropriate base? A lot of our Down syndrome kids will bat the ball off the tee and run into left field. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. First base is over there, We interview parents. We interviewed the teacher, classroom teaching assistants. The doctor will give us information. It'll go directly to the school nurse. We cannot get any information from the doctor. It all has to come from the school nurse because medical information is completely confidential. Okay? So if there's anything you need medically on a child, it'll be written in the IEP, but you could also get it from the school nurse. But all these people are significant in letting us know a little bit about the kid before we test them or assess them. Before we assess any of these kids, we look at the reliability and the validity. These 2 will come up on next week's quiz. Reliability, does the test what it's supposed to test? Does the test what it's supposed to test? If I use the language and speech assessment to test a kid's motor abilities, it ain't testing what I want it to. Okay? But if I test a child where an assessment was written by a committee of physical educators, then it's probably a pretty reliable test. Validity, who wrote the test? Okay, if a language and speech teacher wrote a test for me to test motor skill development, not going to be very valid because they don't know much about physical education. Okay, so who wrote the test? Is it valid? We use norm reference tests. Okay, first of all, before I go on, any questions about this? Does this make sense? We're going to look at a real life case here in a second. So, any questions about this, you guys?
Can you repeat on reliability one more time?
Say that again.
Can you repeat on what reliability stands?
Validity,
No, the reliability.
reliability.
Yeah.
Does the test
Had one drink.
test what it's supposed to test? Does the test what it's supposed to test? Okay. And my contention to that is if we used a language and speech assessment to test the kid's motor skills, it's not going to test what it's supposed to. Right? Obviously. Okay, does that make sense? All right, we use norm reference, random sample of scores to a comparable group, and that's what the content standards are. We're going to look at the content standards in a couple weeks, and we're going to see what kids should be performing at grade level. That's a big answer there. When I ask you the question, what do the content standards represent? What kids should be achieving at grade level. Grade level. All subject matter, language arts, social sciences, physical education, mathematics, all operate under standards. They all operate under standards. There are certain standards that need to be taught under those disciplines, okay? And it's all based on what kids should be doing at grade level. The preschool assessment scale was chronological age. 1.5 to 2 years below your chronological age, there's probably some significant delays or unique needs happening there. Some assessments are criterion referenced. You have a level of mastery, the best scores to achieve on a certain skill, and you compare the individual score to the mastery. Okay? I've never really used a criterion reference. I've mostly used a chronological age or a standards-based type of assessment. Now, here's two things to pay attention to. This is very important. When you test kids, we try to use unobtrusive measures without distractions. Unobtrusive measures means testing a child without distractions. If you take a child with autism out onto the playground and you try to get the best out of that child you can as far as catching, throwing, kicking, hopping, jumping, they are so distractible, we call those obtrusive measures, trying to test a kid with distractions. So where's the best place to go to test a child? In the gym, in the auditorium, anywhere you can go where they're least distractible and you'll get the most out of that child. Kids with ADD, ADHD who can't stay on task or who can't focus for a long period of time, you want them behind closed doors the best you can to test them without distractions, okay? Does that make sense, you guys? So when we test kids, we want to use obtrusive measures. Okay, these are the areas that we test in. We try to look at all these 5 domains, and this is going to come back because I'm going to ask you a question down the road. What are the 5 domains that physical educators teach in? Perceptual motor, object control, locomotor movement, fitness, and adaptive behaviors. These are the 5 domains right here. Okay? When we, yes, question?
So unobtrusive measures are testing children with distractions?
Yeah. They're the kids that are easily distractible, and you take them out on the playground, every bus that drives by, every bird that flies by, any car, other children on the playground, they're going to be highly distracted.
Okay.
And we call those obtrusive measures. So we try to avoid intrusive measures and try to make it unobtrusive when we test kids. Make sense?
Gotcha. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we do our assessment, we look at all of our results, and we create this thing called a present level of performance, PLP. And that's even on your buzzword. PLP stands for present level of performance. Always keep in mind, we're just trying to get an idea of what the child can and can't do. Okay? On the PLP, you write the strengths, you write what their needs or significant delays and unique needs are, and then you write a statement on if you think their disability would impact their ability to access a general PE curriculum. Okay? Now let's take a look at Hugo. This is a real life scenario and a real type of a disability of a child who came into us from a different country. And this is what it looks like. If I can find him. Okay, there he is. All right. Hugo is a male. He's a 4th grader. He was diagnosed with an orthopedic impairment, which is an eligibility code, orthopedic impairment. He was referred by his classroom teacher, and the purpose of the assessment was to obtain a current estimate of his motor development and abilities to assist the IEP team in determining the need for adapted physical education. Modifications or any accommodations were not relevant to Hugo's ability to access a general PE curriculum, which I kind of look at that saying that I guess modifications and accommodations weren't really attempted because they didn't think that based on the way his disability was represented, they would be effective or helpful. That's the way I looked at that. He's a child born with spina bifida, okay? He is ambulatory and he's not confined to a wheelchair. He has club foot and he has inversion, which means his feet both come together and they invert inward like this, which inhibits his ability to run. Mother reports that Hugo falls down a lot and has trouble playing games with his peers, and mom is concerned that Hugo also appears to be overweight. Spanish is his primary language. He seems to better understand directions when they are explained very slowly and demonstrated to him. Hugo has been residing in Mexico and has never attended a public school. This is his first experience in a public school. He engages in physical activity very seldom with his peers during recess and lunch, sits on the bench during most of the time, has a few friends in class, but they don't engage much with him on the playground. Hugo has a mild demeanor. He's shy, quiet, stays to himself, and he's very cooperative, complies with teacher directions, and he seems to tire easily. Okay, here's a diagram of what spina bifida looks like. The vertebral column, the bone structure during birth as a congenital birth defect, did not fuse properly. And as the spinal cord grew, it started this outpouch effect that looks like this. It could be cervical, it could be in the thoracic, it could be in the lumbar, but anywhere where it affects the spinal cord on down could cause paralysis or some type of deformity in the body, okay? This is what they call, and I'll give a more descriptive thing about this later on down the road, but this is called a myelomeningocele outpouch, okay? And like I say, it could cause complete paralysis from this point down, or it just could form some type of deformity where the child just has bowel control and other issues going on besides that aren't as impactful as paralysis. So we took Hugo, who is ambulatory. He's not paralyzed in his legs, but he does have this spina bifida issue going on. And this is how we tested him out. Here's the raw scores. You see perceptual motor, optic control, locomotor, fitness, and then there's another section I didn't include it on behavior. The nice thing about this test that we use is it, based on the score and his age, computes a percentile rank. It also color codes those that are significant delay or at risk. So if I look at perceptual motor, he's pretty much a little bit low in his balance, static and dynamic type of balance activities. Pretty low, because remember, if you're in the 19th percentile, that means that 81% of the kids your age can do better. Okay? He hit 100% on his imitation of postures, 25% on his balance right close. But when it came to alternate hopping, he had a real hard time and scored only in the 10th percentile. So it's color-coded gray that says, ooh, that's a risky area for him. In object control, not too bad throwing and catching, but kicking a rolling ball was a real problem. Okay, he scored in the 4th percentile, which means 96% of the kids his age can do better than him. All the locomotor skills, and that was how it was defined at the top, that he had running problems. He had inversion club feet, he's overweight. So all the locomotor skills here were a problem for him, and you could see running form less than 1%. Okay, he scored 4 percentile, 4th percentile, 6, which is a risk, and then the 2 percentile. In fitness, everything seemed to be in the okay range, but again, the agility run in the 8th percentile, that sets up a red flag. So now you look at these assessment results, and everything that he could do, you write it in the strength category. Everything that he has difficulty with goes in the needs category, right? Because you have 3 levels to the present level of performance. The need, or the strengths, that's all the white box area. The needs, which is the gray and the beige area. And then the third part is you decide subjectively if you think his spina bifida will adversely affect his ability to access a general PE curriculum. So this test kind of highlights the weak areas, and that's what you do for the parent. You try to paint the picture to the parent of what the child can do, his strengths, his needs, and the impact of his disability. Now, the law says this. The law says that for every area of need, for every area of significant delay, you should write a goal. You should write a goal for that child. Qualify them for special ed, write a goal. My teachers used to really balk at that because that's a lot of paperwork and a lot of goals written. And so the way we sort of got around that is we would write goals in balance that would enhance his ability to jump, run, hop, or gallop. Balance is the focal point to almost anything we do. Kicking, throwing, catching, all our locomotor movements. The precursor to success in those skills is how well you have balance. So in some cases, we would write a balance goal to enhance all these significant delays or unique needs. In some cases, we would go ahead and write a couple goals for the child to succeed. Okay, does that make sense, you guys? Does that make sense? So, and you can see if you have to write a goal for every low performance, teachers get a little annoyed having to do that, but that's what the law says you should be doing. So we try to enhance all these skills by working on one particular component. So, okay. Any questions or thoughts? This column here is the standard deviation from the norm. So But we just really we plug in the raw scores of how they performed, and then we look at the percentile rank, how they compared to their own age group population for this particular assessment. This assessment uses percentile ranks. Other assessments use chronological age, so it depends on what you're using. Okay? Now, all right. So we looked at Hugo's history. We looked at the assessment that we provided for Hugo. We wrote what his strengths and his needs, and we wrote an impact statement about his disability, whether he could access a general PE curriculum. Now, here's the types of physical education service deliveries, and I sent you this in a PDF. It was taken straight out of the California State Framework and the California State Content Standards. General PE is your regular PE program, your sporting sport and dance and everything, no modifications at all to this particular program. Most of us were in general PE classes. Modified PE, you could be in general PE with modifications. Specially designed PE is a PE program for your profound students. It's just a participatory program. No goals are written. If you have a child who's trach tube, has eye movement, can maybe grasp a beanbag, it becomes more therapeutic than it does educational to write goals. So they created a specially designed PE that we can offer parents just to include that child in the attempt. Consultation, let's say that Kevin's the general PE teacher and I'm the adapted PE teacher, and I'm going to make a decision to put Hugo in your class, Kevin, and I'm going to consult with you. There's two types of consultation. This is going to come up on next week's quiz. A formal consultation means that there are goals written. Kevin, you're going to be responsible to try to meet those goals in a year, okay? And I'm going to consult with you to help you get there with Hugo. Or we go to the IEP meeting and the parent says, you know what? We don't need goals. I just want you to check on my boy just to make sure he's doing okay. So we call that an informal consultation. Okay? Make sense? One of them is goal-driven. One of them is not goal-driven. Okay? Make sense? Then collaboration, that means that Kevin and I are working together. We're team teaching together. We might teach together. You might have Hugo a couple days and I have him a couple days. But we're working together. It's a combination of hands-on plus advice. Collaboration, hands-on plus advice. Consultation, giving advice only. Okay? Then there's adapted physical education, and that's a small group instructional program for kids who cannot access a general PE, a modified PE, specially designed consultative model collaboration. They cannot access any of those other PE programs, and we take them in a small group instructional format called adapted physical education. Okay? Adapted physical education is also a collaborative model. It's also a consultative model. But without the collaboration, without the consultation, it's a direct service adapted PE. Okay? So we go to this IEP meeting and we make a recommendation. Yeah. Question.
Can you explain adapted PE one more time?
Adapted PE is a small group physical education program for students who cannot access a general PE program with or without modifications. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They cannot access a general PE program with or without modifications. Now, I just want to bring up that adapted PE is also collaborative. It's also consultative, right? I should probably draw an arrow that goes from here back to here because of integration and everything going on, everything's becoming collaborative and consultative, and there's less and less individual adapted PE classes. Okay? Things are becoming more collaborative and consultative. And then lastly, okay, any questions before I go on to the last thing?
I seem to get mixed up on that last one. So,
okay, sorry.
Someone who is in adapted PE cannot access general PE or modified PE, or cannot access general PE without modifications?
Okay. Someone who is in a direct service, consider this a direct service, no collaboration, no consultation, is for a child who cannot access a general PE program with or without modifications.
Okay, so
Okay.
being in a modified PE program does not disqualify you from being in an adapted PE program?
Being in a modified PE program, no, that would be the type of program that you would be put into, which would be a general PE with modifications.
And that's not a form of adapted PE?
No, it's not at all.
Okay.
A form of adapted PE, and a good question, Daniel. A form of adapted PE would be collaborative, because Hugo is with you 2 days a week, and then he's with my adapted PE class the other 2 days. Or adapted PE could be consultation adapted PE, where I've got him in your class and I'm consulting with you. Okay? But this is a direct service. This is you and I team teaching together. And this is you taking Hugo the consultation with me, consulting with you on how to help him succeed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
All inclusive then, right? So in the adapted PE.
Yeah, these models here, all inclusive with general ed peers most likely. Right, Sergio? Yeah, okay. And then, okay, any other questions? I like what you're coming at me with. Any other thoughts or concerns? So on a question, a test coming up, tell me 3 out of 5 different types of physical education service delivery models. General PE, a modified PE, specially designed PE, any one of these 3 out of 5, I might ask you a question, what are 2 types of consultation models of adapted PE? One could be formal, goal-driven, and one is informal, not goal-driven. Parent says, we don't need to write goals for my kid. Just check on him, make sure he's doing okay. All right, now let me share with you one more thing. This is going to blow your mind when I show you this. No, wrong one. Sorry. Here we go. All right. An IEP meeting. So we accumulate our results. In the Los Angeles Unified School District, there are 750,000 students. Of those 750,000 students, at least 65 to 70,000 students have been identified as special ed students. Okay, Hugo was tested by all these people. Well, not by all, but most of the majority here. The administrator at the IEP meeting, and all these people come together, the administrator makes about $115,000 a year. The school nurse, somewhere about $70,000. Language and speech, about $90,000. RT, about $70,000. APE, anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. PT, anywhere, figure, because they're a medical model, about $70,000. OT, $70,000. The parent will come sometimes to the meeting with an advocate. The advocate charges $150 an hour. That's pretty good, huh? And guess who pays for that? the district. The school district pays for the advocate's time. There's going to be a special ed classroom teacher there. She'll make anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 a year. The general PE teacher will show up because if we put Hugo in his or her class, they're going to want to know, something about Hugo and whether they think it's appropriate for him to be there. There's a general ed teacher also going to be there to determine whether or not what's the best environment for them to be on. And then the school psychologist, who makes somewhere in $90,000 to $110,000 a year, is going to be there. There's a lot of money sitting at this table. I would say there's well over $500,000 sitting at this table, and that's for one kid. Okay? So a lot of money goes into special ed to provide the services for those students who are identified. And the psychologist usually comes out, the psychologist and the school nurse will determine eligibility. The service providers will determine whether they qualify or not, okay, based on their assessment results. All service providers come prepared to read their reports. We all come to read our reports, their strengths, their needs, the impact of their disability in their respective disciplines, based on their assessment results. They write strengths, needs, and impact statement on a present level of performance form. And at the conclusion of the meeting, the school district offers FAPE, free and appropriate public education. The parent over here has to make a decision and say, we'll stay with the public school. We'll get all these services, whatever they qualify for. Or the parent says, no, thank you. We'd rather go to our private school. A smaller group instruction, we think Hugo will succeed there. And then the district closes that IEP, they put it on file, and they say, good luck, parent, you're going to have to pay for all of these services on your own. That's kind of how it works. The public school, they get all these services for whatever they qualify for. And sometimes, and you might even notice assistive technology, AT was not here, VI was not here, visually impaired, deaf and hard of hearing was not here. Only those services that were relevant to Hugo were invited to this meeting or were asked to do assessments on Hugo. Okay? Any thoughts, any concerns, any ideas? Okay. I included this today because I was going to include it next week. If we were in class, I have it all scripted out. We would have role played this. And I would have had some of you come up and be the administrator, the nurse, LAS, RT, and so on. But I created this diagram just to give you an idea of the roundtable effect of an IEP meeting and what it entails. Okay? Any thoughts or concerns? To make sense? Okay. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. We have, we went through a lot, and I try to tailor these discussions or these lectures so it's not TMI. You know what TMI stands for, right? Too much information. I try not to overload it, but I give you a piece of the pie, and hopefully you're starting to connect the dots as we go.